This peaceful, poetic image of the Earth seen from space is misleading. Powerful telluric forces are constantly perturbing the planet. Magnificent volcanoes and tumultuous oceans, clashing over millions of years, have created dazzling archipelagos. Borne by winds and currents, we're setting sail for one of these breathtakingly beautiful islands. The cruise ship Le Soleil set sail on an expedition to Central America. This narrow strip of land is one of the most astonishing geological crossroads on the planet. It separates the Pacific Ocean from the Atlantic Ocean and connects North and South America. Accompanied by leading volcanologists, we'll discover some of the most active volcanoes in this region of the world. Both fascinating and destructive, their ferocious eruptions engender fear in local communities, while at the same time they are the subject of native legend and popular tales of adventure. Traveling from Guatemala to Panama, Nicaragua, and Costa Rica, we will set off on an astonishing journey to see the volcanoes of Central America. At 6 a.m., the Soleil approaches Puerto Quetzal in Guatemala. This Pacific Ocean port is one of the largest in Guatemala and is a magnet for people from all over the country. They come to try their luck in this semblance of an El Dorado, a port open to global opportunities. Many of these people come from the Central Cordillera, the mountain range bristling with volcanoes that crosses the country from east to west. Guatemala is part of the Pacific Ring of Fire, a 40,000-kilometer-long belt of volcanic activity which forms a ring around the largest ocean on the planet. Emmanuel, our guide, has been living in Guatemala for 25 years. It was his passion for volcanoes that first brought him here.
On the 1,100-kilometer section of the Ring of Fire from Costa Rica to Guatemala, there's a record number of volcanoes, one every 25 kilometers. While in the central region of Guatemala, there is one volcano every 11 kilometers.
Many volcanoes in the Cordillera are up to 4,000 meters high. Despite the thick layer of cloud that shrouds these volcanoes in mist, these volcanoes have a powerful presence. We're now driving to Antigua, which was the first capital city of Guatemala, founded in the 16th century by the Spanish conquistadors. Situated at the foot of the volcano Acatenango, Antigua is one of the most beautiful cities in the New World. Antigua is the country's #1 tourist destination. Visitors are seduced by the charm of its cobbled streets, as well as its pretty squares and churches. What they might not realize is that in the past, this city has been hit by many natural disasters. At the end of the 19th century, scientists discovered that the Earth's crust was not uniform in thickness, but was composed of tectonic plates that are constantly moving. Several of them, which exert opposing forces, collide in the depths of the Earth's crust. A geological battleground whose dramatic consequences are often felt above ground in Guatemala, as the volcanologist Gustavo Xiña explains.
The Cocos Plate, the Caribbean Plate, and the North American Plate are not only capable of causing major earthquakes, they're also responsible for the continuing new eruptions of volcanoes.
The ruins of the former colonial city, destroyed by an earthquake on July 29, 1773, testify to the raging battle that goes on beneath the surface.
This is a densely populated country, and that makes us vulnerable. A lot of work is being done on monitoring seismic and volcanic activity because the capital, Guatemala City, as well as the rest of the country, is exposed to a large number of natural phenomena such as earthquakes and volcanic eruptions.
For now, the Acatenango, which overlooks Antigua, is quiet. But another volcano, Volcán de Fuego, 30 kilometers away, concerns volcanologists the most. We take the road that leads to the foot of Fuego. It's a bumpy track, blackened by ash from the most recent eruptions. We finally reach Manipache. It's the rainy season and it's hard for buses to get here. Manipache is at the end of the road, but it might as well be at the end of the world. It is here, less than 9 kilometers from the crater, that the Fuego Observatory is located. 24 hours a day, 3 people take it in turns to monitor the seismographs that take the volcano's pulse. Amilcar was born here. Ever since he was a child, he's had a special connection with the volcano. He feels its vibrations, knows its rumbles, but he'd never before experienced an eruption as powerful as the one he witnessed when he was on duty at the observatory on June 3, 2018.
It started off with loud, steady rumbles. It sounded like a locomotive, a continuous noise, you know?
The rumbling was soon followed by a plume of smoke and ash that escaped from the crater and rose to more than 1,000 meters high in the sky.
Then the clouds of ash got bigger and bigger. They were swirling upwards into the sky. The local population was very worried. That was in the morning. By the evening, the volcanic activity became really serious.
The ash plume grew to more than 10 kilometers high. During the night, the eruptions became cataclysmic. The sky was ablaze with a continuous rain of hot ash and magma. Volcanic ash from the Fuego covered the entire region. The inhabitants of Manipache lost their crops, but they survived. Such a miracle, they thought, could only be the work of God.
Volcanic ash destroyed all of our crops. We wondered, what are we going to live on? But we thanked God for having mercy on us and sparing us, because we live very close to the volcano. God took mercy on us.
A few days after the eruption was over, the inhabitants of Manipache discovered to their horror that a pyroclastic flow had descended on the nearby village of Los Lotes. An avalanche of lava, gas, and ash at a temperature of 1,000 degrees centigrade came rushing down the slopes of the volcano at speed. The same phenomenon that destroyed Pompeii 2,000 years ago struck Los Lotes. The village was wiped off the map. 10 a.m. We are in San Francisco de Sales, a village at the foot of the volcano Pacaya. The gods are on our side. It stops raining as we prepare to climb the volcano with Gustavo Chiña, the volcanologist.
We must carry out a very thorough survey of Pacaya's activity. First of all, because it's only 30 kilometers from the capital, and secondly, because there are many tourists and inhabitants in the region. In the last few days, we have observed a big increase in strombolian activity inside the crater.
To carry out this investigation, Gustavo will need to spend a couple of days at the top of the volcano. Several mules carry the food and equipment we will all need to set up camp. After a 2-hour walk, we reach a promontory. The Pacaya is in front of us. Impressive. From the summit, which is over 2,500 meters high, two incandescent lava flows draw visible lines of fire which can be seen in the emerging darkness.
Pacaya is the most significant geological phenomenon in Guatemala. This place where we are now is the only area accessible to tourists. Only scientists are authorized to access the crater, to take temperature readings and, where possible, install measuring instruments. The temperature of the lava flow is about 800 degrees, but it can rise to 1,200 degrees and become even more fluid and fast-moving. As well as lava flows, there can also be eruptions at the summit.
We leave Guatemala and head for Nicaragua, another country in the Pacific Ring of Fire. Central America is home to hundreds of volcanoes, and that's not counting the many volcanoes that lie in the depths of the ocean and provide a backdrop to an astonishingly rich aquatic life. A group of about 10 pilot whales have just surfaced portside. The captain turns off the ship's engine so that we may quietly observe these amazing creatures that sometimes come close to ride the bow waves of boats.
We were very lucky to come across these pilot whales. We decided to interrupt the lecture that was taking place so that our passengers could enjoy this moment.
Measuring about 6 meters long, pilot whales owe their genus name to the Latin word globus. And they have a distinctive large bulbous head. They swim alongside the ship for a good while. And then, as mysteriously as they appeared, they disappear back into the depths. Several naturalists are taking part in this expedition cruise. They give lectures and talk to the passengers. Taking advantage of this day at sea, the captain asks Eveline, the team's volcanologist, to explain why Central America is home to so many volcanoes.
So here we see the South American plate, and the North American plate is just here. And so the whole of Central America forms an isthmus. And what's crazy is that this isthmus didn't even exist 4 or 5 million years ago. South America and North America were separate. And then the Cocos plate began to slide under the Caribbean plate and the North American plate. It started to push up the seabed, and that's what gradually created the isthmus. And underwater volcanoes began to appear. All this took about 10 million years, and we know today that for about the last 2.5 million years, the isthmus has completely cut off the Caribbean Atlantic marine area from the Pacific marine area.
What were the consequences of the formation of the isthmus?
The warm waters that once flowed from the Pacific Ocean ceased. Instead, they were forced to travel up along the coast of North America and were pushed back into the Atlantic, creating the famous Gulf Stream current.
The formation of Central America was therefore at the origin of the Gulf Stream. For 2 million years, this ocean current has been warming the waters of the Atlantic and tempering the climate across northern Europe. A beneficial action which, according to some scientists, could soon be called into question by climate change. In the early morning, we approach the coast of Nicaragua. With the help of the harbor pilot, the captain chooses the best place to anchor.
You see here too much fishing boat, or we can go a little bit more inside?
Okay.
Possible?
Yeah, it's okay.
We'll try to keep the ship's bow into the swell. All the passengers are excited and ready to disembark. Well, here we go.
San Juan del Sur is Nicaragua's leading seaside destination. But it's the volcanoes that we've come here to see. We head north towards Granada. For there, 100 kilometers from the ocean, are the volcanoes we want to see. Nicaragua has the largest lakes in Central America. Their presence is a reflection of the long geological history of the country, explains Yannick, our guide and volcanologist.
Where we now see the lakes of Nicaragua, millions of years ago, you would have seen the sea, an open bay. Volcanic activity deposited layers of pyroclastic material, and the open sea bay was closed off to form a lake, and North America joined South America. That's how Central America was geologically formed.
This volcano here is Mombacho. Its crater is now covered by thick rainforest. Lava stone is the most famous volcanic rock, but there are many other types, as we discover as we follow Yannick into the huge quarry carved into the side of the volcano.
Here we are. We're just under 10 kilometers from Granada, on the slopes of the Mombacho volcano. This is a pozzolana quarry that the locals call Hormigón. We can see the stratifications which have built up from the eruptions of Mombacho. There's basalt and andesite. We can see signs of oxidation on the ferrous parts. It's used a lot in Granada, especially in the colonial house buildings for decoration.
Spared by the tourist invasion, there is something about Granada which is reassuringly old-fashioned. Before succumbing to the charm of the Gran Sultana, as the Ticos call it, we first head to Masaya. The German volcanologist Wilfried Strauch has dedicated his entire life to the study of this volcano, which is the only one of its kind in the world.
You know, this volcano is active all the time. It's the most active volcano of Nicaragua. This crater is the youngest. All the volcano complex consists of a number of craters of different size. Well, you can imagine this crater has a diameter of about 500 meters, and it was completely filled with lava. When the Spanish conquest was going on in the 16th century, there were giant fountains of lava coming out to several kilometers height. And the light emitted by these lava fountains was so bright that they were able to read their books.
Masaya's lava lake is mesmerizing. It is admired as much as it is feared. In pre-Columbian times, the Chorotega Indians made human sacrifices to the lava lake to appease the fury of the gods. In the 16th century, conquistadors wanted to empty it, as they believed it was filled with molten gold. As for the priests who came to evangelize the people of the New World, it was the gates of hell. To exorcise the devil within, they erected a gigantic crucifix above the caldera of the volcano. Traces of some of these beliefs and superstitions are still with us today, because despite the best efforts of researchers, not all the workings of volcanoes are understood, and volcanology is still a relatively new science. David, a young Nicaraguan volcanologist, is in charge of monitoring Masaya. He comes regularly to check that the measuring instruments installed on the crater are working properly.
This is a multi-gas monitoring instrument. It's used to monitor the volcano and measure 3 types of gases produced: sulfur dioxide, CO2, and hydrogen. This device is activated electronically. Every 4 hours, it measures the amount of gas produced by the volcano. About 1,200 tons of sulfur dioxide are produced every month.
The information collected is sent via the internet to the Institute of Volcanology in Palermo, Italy, for analysis. The village of Oriente is only a few kilometers from Masaya. Its inhabitants are directly affected by these gas emissions. Teodoro knows that the volcano is dangerous, but it's his livelihood, perpetuating a skill that's been in the family for generations, and in a Amerindian tradition. He makes sculptures out of lava stone.
It's a family tradition. My father used to make millstones. That's how I started. Then I began to make them myself. But I soon realized that millstones were becoming worth less and less. So that's why I started carving other objects, like idols. These are replicas of the idols that our ancestors worshipped. There's the god of corn, the god of sun, the god of rain, the goddess of fertility, the eagle god, as he was known, the crocodile god, the cocoa god, all the gods that our ancestors worshipped.
For Teodoro, choosing the lava stone to carve his idols is a way of conversing with the volcano and of acknowledging its power. For him, the Masaya isn't simply a mountain of inert rock. It's the home of the gods. This belief is common to all people who live at the foot of volcanoes. David, whom we are following along the edge of another crater, will explain.
Ese color negro no
This
es
black material isn't ash or sand. We call it Pelé's hair. It comes from the lava from the volcano Concepcion. Let me show you. Look at the hair, which is made of tiny crystals. Small bubbles of gas sometimes form on the surface. When they are lifted on the wind, they form very fine filaments, like hair. The name Pelé's hair comes from the island of Hawaii. It was there that people worshipped the goddess Pelé, the goddess with long hair.
As night falls, we are inexorably drawn towards the rim of the crater. It's impossible to resist. Impossible to escape the spell of Masaya and its lava lake. Only 3 volcanoes in the world have a permanent lava lake. According to Wilfried, who has been working on Masaya for over 30 years, this phenomenon is still partly unexplained. And in particular, the wave movement that constantly makes the surface undulate at a temperature of over 1200 degrees centigrade. The lava waves of the Masaya stay with us for a good part of the night. In the morning, we set sail again on the calm waters of the Pacific in the direction of Cocos, a volcanic island near the Galapagos. In Guatemala and Nicaragua, volcanoes were formed as a result of the collision of tectonic plates. These are known as subduction volcanoes. The volcano on Cocos Island is a different type. The mantle of basalt rock that envelops the Earth's core is cracked in places. These are known as hotspots. These hotspots enable magma to rise up through the crust and reach the open air, where it solidifies, forming a volcano. These hotspots are static, unlike the Earth's crust, which is constantly moving. So a single hotspot can give rise to several volcanoes. This is the case for Cocos Island and the Galapagos Islands. We set sail for Cocos Island, lost in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. This island is said to have inspired Robert Louis Stevenson and his novel Treasure Island, and served as the setting for the film Jurassic Park. Our journey takes on a new dimension. Our cruise now feels like an adventure, but all adventures require preparation.
It's a unique island from an environmental perspective. It's the only island in the Eastern Pacific to have a tropical rainforest. And it's never been inhabited. The fact that it's so remote is a real plus for our passengers.
Down in the engine room, the chief engineer makes the final checks to ensure that everything is in perfect working order. In the theater, under the watchful eye of the commander, the expedition leader has gathered the passengers to brief them on this unique stopover. Only one thing remains in doubt: the weather.
We're right in the middle of the ITCZ, the Intertropical Convergence Zone, also called the doldrums by sailors. There's a real sense of anticipation, yes, a real sense of adventure. Going to Cocos Island is exciting for even experienced sailors who sail in relatively remote areas of the globe throughout the year. It's very gratifying, very interesting.
5 a.m., the captain checks the position one last time. Latitude 5 degrees 31 minutes north, longitude 87 degrees 03 minutes west. Cocos Island is now in our sights. Not many of the crew have ever had the chance to visit here before. On the bridge, there is a sense of tension and excitement.
This is what Cocos Island is all about. The weather, the swell, a certain degree of trust in the navigation charts. All this requires a high level of concentration from the crew on the bridge, even more than usual. But here we are, we're on our final approach. Everything's under control.
The captain drops anchor a short distance from shore. The sailors lower the Zodiacs into the water, but before they can take the passengers ashore, they must first obtain permission from the Costa Rican authorities.
Hello, change to channel 25. It's better. Over.
Okay, I'm switching to channel 25.
Hundreds of frigate birds and petrels fly around this mysterious island covered with thick rainforest. The first Zodiacs leave the ship and head for the wild, inhospitable, and perhaps even dangerous shoreline.
As a diver and marine biologist, this is a truly mythical place. Cocos Island is also known as Shark Island. There's a multitude of shark species, and this rock 550 kilometers from the coast is kind of an oasis, with extremely strong currents as well as deep currents that come up to the surface. There's also a multitude of plankton that grow here, and this is what attracts the fauna and the top predators in the food chain, which here, underwater, are the sharks.
As soon as we reach the shore, there's a big thunderstorm. We take refuge with the park rangers. They work all year round to ensure the protection of this island, which has been a national park and on the UNESCO World Heritage List since 1997.
The weather can change very quickly here, as it's an island and is therefore very exposed to the rain that comes in from the open sea. On Cocos Island, we have between 7 and 8 meters of rain per year. This is because we are in the middle of the intertropical convergence zone. In winter, it is sometimes a little further north or a little further south, but in the intertropical zone, it's always over Cocos Island. That means we have rain all year round.
Visitors here are rare. The only real way for Costa Ricans to learn more about this tiny, remote island is to come and work here.
I didn't know much about this island when I first came to work here. It was a real discovery for me. Cocos Island is a paradise. There's the beach, the mountains, it's stunning. The wildlife here is nearly all endemic species. Even the rangers are endemic species.
We're like little kids learning all about the history of our planet. I'm bowled over. It's amazing.
What will stick in my memory is that wherever you look, there's always something to make you go, wow. Be it the fauna, the flora, the volcanology, it's astounding.
Beautiful and mysterious Cocos Island. In the 17th century, this island became a pirate hideout. Between attacks on Spanish convoys, they came to take refuge here and hide their treasure. Perhaps it's a figment of my imagination, but just as we were leaving the island, I thought I might have seen a pirate flag fluttering over the island. "36 hours later, having left Cocos Island, we return to the shores of Central America. We arrive in Costa Rica. This is the third country in the volcanic arc that we are exploring on this cruise. Similar to Guatemala and Nicaragua, the volcanoes of Costa Rica are located about 100 kilometers inland. But this time we shall take the opportunity to explore the rainforest that lies along the coast. In the Carrara National Park, we meet up with Eveline, the expedition volcanologist. She is in mid-conversation with Exxon, a local wildlife guide.
How do you explain the fact that there is so much biodiversity of plants and animals here?
The isthmus appeared as a result of volcanic eruptions and sediment deposits about 3 million years ago. A biological bridge was formed. For the animals, Costa Rica became the only route from north to south.
When the volcanoes here in Costa Rica erupt, does the ash come all the way down here?
Yes, of course. We get ash falling here. The eruptions release ash and rocks, and yes, we get ash and gas falling here.
Most of the ash that falls in the forest originates from the Poas volcano. Until only a few months ago, the Poas crater was filled with a turquoise-blue acid lake. But in early 2019, in the space of a few hours, the lake disappeared into the depths of the Earth's crust. We head for the Cordillera Central to discover this extraordinary volcano. But as we approach San Jose, the capital, we learn that Poas has just erupted again. The eruption didn't escape the surveillance cameras installed on the rim of the crater. The Poas has once again become a threat to life. It's forbidden to go anywhere near it. There are 116 volcanoes in Costa Rica, 5 of which, including Poas, are very active and therefore unpredictable. Volcanologists from the University of San Jose are constantly monitoring them to better understand them.
Here we have real-time surveillance cameras. These cameras record 24 hours a day. There are many others, of course, but I'll show you these ones. Here on the left is the Poas volcano, which is located in the central volcanic Cordillera. And here on the right is the Turrialba volcano. The socio-economic center of Costa Rica is very close to the active volcanoes. I'm talking about 10, 20 or 30 kilometers between the volcanoes and these densely populated areas. So any eruption can easily affect us. For example, the eruption of the Turrialba volcano in 2014 generated so much ash that we had to close Costa Rica's main airport, Santa Maria International Airport.
Change of plan. Since we can't go and visit Poas, we head to Turrialba instead, located about 50 kilometers east of San Jose. With over 100 volcanoes, you could almost say that the whole of Costa Rica is one giant volcano. The land is rich with minerals as a result of volcanic eruptions, making it very fertile and productive for local farmers. The smallest hill, the smallest dale is covered with crops, cereals, fruits, vegetables, not to mention coffee, of course. The slopes of Turrialba are covered with fields, forests, and pastures. They are private property, and to enter them, Benjamin, the volcanologist and guide who accompanies us, must ask for the owner's permission.
Hello, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
What do you do here on this farm?
We breed dairy cows.
Dairy cows?
Yes.
For cheese?
Yes, cheese.
Do you know a way to go up? Not to the crater, but just up a bit further, towards...
The volcano?
Yes.
Here, you can climb from any side. The path is easy to find.
Really?
Yeah. And anyway, the official route is blocked.
And it's easy to find?
Of course. And it's also very beautiful.
We follow closely behind Benjamin as we begin the ascent of Turrialba.
It may sound strange that a person could own part of the volcano. People think that the volcano is just a cone. But in fact, as soon as you start to go up, you're on the Turrialba. You're on the volcano. On this side, the volcano faces the Pacific. On the other side, it's the Caribbean. It's a two-sided volcano. This part is green. The vegetation is beautiful and dense. There are lots of birds and animals. The west side, the other side, isn't anything like this.
After lying dormant for 100 years, the Turrialba erupted in January 2010. This was a disaster for the local population who lived at the foot of the crater. We follow Benjamin to the village of La Centrale. Up until 3 or 4 years ago, several families who bred livestock lived here. Today, it's a ghost town.
Here you really start to see the other side of the volcano. The trade winds that come from the Caribbean blow westwards, towards the Pacific, across the Central American isthmus. They carry everything that comes from the eruptions, everything that the volcano produces. Gradually, the ash covered more and more terrain and eventually covered and destroyed all the vegetation and landscape.
The slopes which have been spared by the acid fumes carried by the wind are still green. The others are blackened and burnt, as if there had been a fire.
Here, look, you can really see it here. This used to be a riverbed. Now there's nothing but ash. All the vegetation is dead. You have to imagine that 25 or even 15 years ago, before the eruption started, there was a woodland here, with birds, tapirs, and all the animals that usually live in the hills above the rainforest. We are, in fact, living on a planet of fire, and all of this is just a manifestation of what is underneath our feet. Can you believe it?
Benjamin was born in a small town near Turrialba. He knows that only the volcano is master of time. He waits for the day when the volcano will fall back into a dormant state. Then nature will regain its rightful territory and the region will regain its color. That is, until the next eruption. Benjamin accepts this fragile balance.
The abundance of nature in this part of the world with, on the one hand, volcanoes, fire and eruptions, and on the other, a dense, inaccessible forest populated by a multitude of colorful birds. All that must be earned. It's a reward, the payoff.
Since we set out on this expedition cruise, we have traveled nearly 3,000 kilometers. After Guatemala, Nicaragua, and Costa Rica, we sailed towards Panama, the last leg of our Central American adventure. The high buildings on the horizon mark our entry into another world, a world of modernity in the legendary Panama Canal. At the dawn of time, the waters of a vast ocean occupied the present location of Central America. 2 million years ago, as a result of tectonic plates colliding, a narrow strip of land bristling with volcanoes was formed. This strip of land connects North and South America but separates the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans. Since the end of the 15th century, man pursued a dream: to dig an interoceanic canal which would open up a faster shipping route to Asia. In 1914, after several decades of pharaonic engineering works, the Panama Canal was completed. The dream became a reality. And it even grew over time, as the canal was widened to enable the passage of bigger and bigger vessels. Yet, indifferent to the work of man, the tectonic plates continued to shift. In 1882, an earthquake destroyed Panama. And then in 2019, there was an earthquake measuring 7.1 on the Richter scale, which was unprecedented in the region. Fortunately, the epicenter was 10 kilometers under the ocean. Will man's work be able to resist the power and persistence of nature?
The Panama fracture zone was caused by the collision of 3 tectonic plates. It is this fracture zone that is at the origin of the great seismic disturbances in our country. The geological zone that stretches from the Atrato region in Colombia to the Limon region in Costa Rica constitutes what's known as the North Panama Deformed Belt. This region has been marked by important geological events throughout its history, so it's likely it will again experience earthquakes as big as the one in 1882.
Eveline, the expedition's volcanologist, takes advantage of these few hours of stopover time to take a stroll through the narrow streets of the old town. For her, as for all travelers, Panama is much more than just a name on a map.
Without any volcanic activity in Central America, North America and South America would still be separate, functioning as two mega islands. They were united a few million years ago, allowing all the passage and exchange of fauna and flora that we talked about. So, in this respect, the volcanic activity of Panama is very important even today, although it is discussed less than the other Central American countries.
Sailing from Guatemala to Panama along this arc of volcanoes traced by the Pacific Ring of Fire, we have, day after day, discovered grandiose landscapes. The deep blue of the Pacific Ocean, the vibrant green of the rainforests, and the red of the molten lava make up the color palette of Central America. But this region has shown us much more than just powerful and colorful landscapes. Despite the many eruptions and earthquakes, people still live in the shadow of volcanoes. For although these volcanoes are sometimes deadly, their anger enriches the earth and is a sign of life. This is Central America, endearing, spectacular, and constantly changing.